Alright, what's good YouTube? We're back again with another tutorial today. As you can see, we're doing a melody tutorial, so this is a little bit different than what we typically do. If you haven't already, like, comment, share, subscribe, show some love to the channel so that I can keep making these videos, and hopefully the algorithm gods and YouTube gods will bless me and start throwing me out there in the algorithm so I can be seen more. I can do this a lot more often and more frequently. So what we're going to do today is just kind of break down step by step how I do my melodies, how I kind of build up a good loop to work with, and we'll just kind of go from there. So let's go ahead and hop into FL Studio and get started. Alright guys, so the first thing that I like to do typically when I'm making my melodies is I like to start with something simple, usually the background type of sound. So we're going to hop into the piano roll and I'm going to show you kind of how I make this melody. How I made this melody. So this melody looks a lot more complex than it actually is, but we're just going to go through and kind of break it on down. So to start off, the way that I typically start my melodies, I like to start with usually like a chord of some sort. So something like, let's just say that, for example. Right. So as you can see, when I started this melody, the longer chords that are like this and not the shorter ones like this are the ones that I originally started. So that's like my original melody. So like these little tiny ones right here, just kind of take imagine those not being here. So let's look at it in just one little piece, and we'll look at it in this first bar here. So we're going to take this out, this out, this out, and that out, and these here. Actually, we'll take all of these out to start with. This is like my original kind of loop of how I started things out, right? So as you can see, it's pretty simple. It's just a triad chord, and then a chord missing one of the notes. So let's go ahead and play what it sounded like beforehand. And when I originally did this, I actually had the notes a little bit shorter, but I stretched them out to make them more ambient and kind of last longer, because the longer the chord, the longer the sound plays. And that's basically what I started off with, right? Once I had something that was just like this right here, that was just a simple, type of chord melody, basically what I went and did was add in some mid notes and some top notes. So let's go ahead and add these sounds back in there, these other notes. There we go. So once I had that layer of those chords that were in there, those longer ones, I just copied and pasted it all the way through to a 4-bar loop. I usually start with a 4-bar loop, and then once I get my final melody, I'll copy that and turn it into an 8-bar loop. So once I had those 4-bar loops, what I ended up doing was adding some top end melodies, and some mid melodies. So I had the chords, and I went in and shortened the notes that I had, made them half notes, and I just kind of placed them in the same key, but I randomized those notes. So I ended up adding these notes that I deleted earlier. So let's just copy these right here, or highlight them, excuse me, and I added those, right? So basically all I did was I used these chords that I had previously that aren't highlighted. Let's go stretch this out to make it simpler to look at for us. Where's the there it is. So I used those chords that I had earlier and just basically cut them in half and stayed in the same note, the same key essentially. And then I would just go in and add notes randomly and make another pattern inside that pattern essentially, right? And the way that I like to look at my melodies is I look at them as different frequency layers, kind of like I use the example of like a sandwich, I believe, or a burger in one of my other tutorials. So I wanted to kind of layer them and stack them upon each other. So I ended up adding these notes in, just kind of randomized, but they all piggyback off of the original chords that I had, right? Once I did that, I ended up with this. Once I ended up with that, I just copied and pasted it all the way through to 4 bars, and then copied and pasted it for the 8-bar loop, right? So it looks a lot more complex than it actually is. It's just a simple chord setup with a couple top notes on there, and I like to add mid notes and high notes. So oops, let's zoom out. Hang on, my bad, guys. So by adding mid notes and high notes, I mean things like I added these notes here in the middle of the melody, right? You can include these two. And then I added some high notes to give it a different type of sound. So that would be these notes up top here, right? So that it's in a different frequency range. You have some low end sound, some mid sound, which would be kind of like in this range right here. So you got your low end, basically, if you want to look at it like this, low end type of sounds. Then you got your mid frequency range sounds right here, the mid frequency, and then you got your high end frequencies, right? So it's like I structured it in a 3-layer structure. So essentially, if you kind of want to think about it like this, I made 3 different melodies inside one melody: a low end melody, medium melody, and a high melody, right? Once I made those, once I have the first melody made, so like I have this as my first melody. Once you got your first melody made, you're basically done with all your melodies, because you can use this to piggyback off the others. So what you want to do is you want to kind of make a nice, spend your time, making a nice, good melodic, or, catchy type of melody, or something that is an ambient type of sound, or a background noise, however you want to do it. It's all based on the actual sound that you pick, because if I change the sound, it may change the whole vibe of the beat and how the style and direction that I went. But I use a pad in this case, so I wanted more of a sound that was present but still pushed to the background, because I knew this was going to be my background melody, something that plays the entire time of the beat but isn't too present, but isn't hidden in the background behind other melodies. So once I did that, I went to my second melody. So let's go and check out the second melody, which is what I've got here, right? And I always like using my ghost notes and having those on, so that way I can see the other previous notes that I made. So once I made that first melody, if you notice, the first melody is all in the low end. So we're talking about from notes from the like C4 all the way up to almost C6. So we ended at B5. So B4 or C4 all the way up to B5. So these are like your low end melody. So again, if you look at it like a sandwich and stack those layers, you got the low end, then you got the mid, and then you got the high. So I repeated that process with my next melody, and I use these keys here, which if you notice, let's go down one more octave, I use all the same notes. So I piggybacked off of the notes that I had, right? So let's put it back where it was. I believe it was right there, right? And then I put them in kind of the high range. The high range would be like your B7s, like your B6 or your 6 range, all the way up to like your 7, 8s, and 9s. Because as you can see in the ghost notes, I got some even higher. So this would be like having a mid-high range of melodies. So I ended up using the same notes from the previous one, and I kind of stretched some of them out longer than others to kind of make it more ambient. That's how you get that ambient feel and that ambient sound, is to stretch your notes out. And this is how this melody ended up coming out. So all I did was literally randomly click in these notes here based off of what I saw in the ghost notes. Because if you have your ghost notes on and you've got a really good ambient kind of cool melody, you can build off of that. Now I wouldn't say keep copying and pasting the same melody, but use this melody, your first one, to build your second one, right? So once the second one is built, you do the same thing for the third. So let's go into that third melody. All I did was in between the low end melody, right, that we have, that you can see in our ghost notes, which would be these right here, that low end melody. Then I squeezed those in between the high end melodies, which if you look at the ghost notes, you got your high end melodies in this range, right? But I kind of mixed them in so like it has a wider frequency range on the third sound, right? So I've got some high end, and then I got some mid melodies basically, right? So I've got the mid area here that's filled in, because again, if you look at your ghost notes, there's really nothing in this range. There's not a whole lot there. So I wanted to fill in the gap and fill in that space. So I put these notes in there, and then I filled it in up top with these notes. But I made this melody a little bit more sporadic. But again, if you take a look, let's highlight them all and move them up and down some octaves, right? So we're in the octave of 5. If you drop them down, every note that you see is a previous note that I used in the ghost notes. So everything is still within key, right? So no matter where I drop it, it's all gonna be notes that I've used before. But I like to make sure that I have a wide frequency range when I'm making these notes. So I have some in the high end, the low end, and the mids, and they all kind of just correlate together, but they're in different areas, so you hear them in the ear differently, essentially, right? And this is what this sounds like. And the thing that you kind of want to utilize when you're making melodies is the frequency range of having the lows, because if you notice, it still follows the same pattern. Even though that this whole melody is in the higher end, I still have a low range, a medium range, and then a high range in my notes, right? And then you want to also utilize the speed that the notes are playing. So let's say you're making the pattern and you have shorter notes and everything's like this. And then let's just go there. Right? So these notes here down at the bottom, because they're shorter and they're more close together as far as spacing, these are going to play faster than what these are going to play, right? So that's how you kind of can like change the speed of the beat without actually changing the speed of the beat. These notes down at the bottom, the A5 and the G and all that stuff, those are going to play faster and sound faster than these up top. So let's just play it just so you guys can hear what I'm talking about. And then just for fun, we'll copy it over just so you guys can hear it and listen to what it sounds like now. That's compared to this. See? If you want to give it some variation, you can throw these down a couple of notes. You could take these and throw this up an octave, and now watch what it's going to sound like. I haven't changed the melody, I just changed where I put the actual notes. See? And that gives it a bit of a different sound, right? So let's go ahead and delete this stuff out of here. And if you notice, I just randomly just click those in because I'm able to click it in because all these notes here that I'm using for my ghost notes are all in the same key. So it doesn't matter how I click this. So we can go this, and I like to stack my notes as well. So like this will give this a different sound than when this is playing solo by itself, for example. So without even thinking, hearing it or anything like that, I know all of this, and I'm randomly clicking again, is going to sound good. So let's just play that little spot right there. I have no idea what it's going to sound like, but I know it's all going to sound in key. And then let's say I do something like this. So let's just copy these notes over, right? And then I want to let's throw it up an octave. Actually, let's go down one real quick. And then I want to just highlight these notes because I don't want to mess up the original pattern that I had, and throw it up one octave. And now let's hear it. All right. So again, I didn't change anything or do anything. All I did was just throw it up a different octave. You could even do something as simple as, okay, I'm just going to grab these few notes here and move these up an octave or two. And that's just how you can give it a different sound. Now let's say you're doing a 4-bar loop. This is the loop here, and you just want to slightly change it. You could do something as simple as, let's move these notes down here and move this note down here. B3 should work. Sometimes you have to go back and reference your previous notes. Where are we at? B. Did I use B? I don't know that I did. So let's just see if that one works. Sometimes you just gotta play it by ear and see. That B3 doesn't work, so we're gonna move it down one note because I know A sharp should work. Or A, is it A flat? Yeah. Sounds kind of weird, actually. It's hard to tell sometimes, but it probably did work. I think that probably did work. It just sounds weird because it's such a low octave. But you go up to there. I made this melody, I wasn't listening to it, didn't know what it would sound like or anything like that. I just put it in there. So it's all about just playing with the melody, even doing stuff like this, like little half notes. So if you notice I have this here, but I don't have it over here, it gives it a little bit of a different variation when it loops back through the cycle. So let's say you make 4-bar loops instead of 8-bar loops like I do. You would just sound, these 2 bars are copied from, well, not exactly. But let's say you're doing a 4-bar loop. This half versus this half sounds a little bit different. And I do that on purpose so it doesn't sound super redundant, essentially. I don't want the melody to sound completely the same all the way through. Once you've got your 3rd melody done, you go down and make you another 4th melody. And I don't really do too many melodies past 4, maybe 5 melodies, sometimes 6, but usually 5 is the sweet spot. It gives you a lot of different melodies to kind of work with to make some different variations throughout the beat. So let's go into this second to last melody. Now here's what we got here. So if you notice, this has a wide range of frequencies. We go all the way up to the 8 range, all the way down to the 5 range, right? So this is what this particular melody sounds like. And again, I'm taking advantage of stacking melodies. So these are stacked, but then they're also like half noted. So like they're a little bit quicker here versus not being so quick from this note to these notes, right? As you can see. So it has some space. So it's almost like you'll hear it like playing and then it speeds up for a second and then it plays back to the normal speed. That's kind of how you want to have it, so that you have different stuff playing in different ranges at different times and then within different frequency levels, and then within different frequency levels within that melody. And that's going to give it that weird bouncy ambient sound and make it sound like it's a bit all over the place as far as the frequency range, but everything sounds cohesive, right? Then I usually like to throw in, the reason I do 5 melodies is typically I have a background and then a main melody, right? So these 2 will typically be playing the entirety of the beat, and I use my next 3 melodies as variations, right? So these here, like I said, will play the whole time. This will play in part of the verse, like not the first half of the verse, because I like to do 16-bar loops for my verses. So it'll be like the first 8 bars of the loop will play these sounds. Then the second part of the total 16-bar verse is going to add this into it. You'll hear that play at some point in time. Then usually in my bridge, that's when I throw in the 4th sound. And then in part of the bridge, once it goes from the bridge back to the hook typically will play all the sounds in all these melodies, but then I do 16-bar hooks as well. On the second half of the 16-bar hook, that's when this lead will come in. And I'll show you that in the actual loop itself. So let's hop on down and add and play the lead. And the lead is pretty simple. It's just some a couple of these notes, so all stretched out and they all touch basically. So it's like consistently playing. There's no gaps. There's nothing in between. And again, as you can see, I'm using all the notes in between. I'm using the same notes that I've already played with and whatnot. And then I have it in a different frequency range. So I don't have a whole lot of notes or anything playing in this area. So that's why I added my lead in this frequency range here. So let's listen to it. And because I do 8-bar loops, I always like to try to make my first I like to make my first 4 bars a little bit different than my last 4 bars. Like I just build off of it. So this note is different, and then adding this little half note, half step, or whatever you want to call it, is different than this one over here, right? And that's how I'm able to make a little bit of a difference between the first part and the second part of the melody. That way it doesn't sound consistently the same over and over and over again, right? So let's play all these melodies together so that way you can hear everything together all at once, and we'll all hear it play. That's everything played together. Now, when you go into your channel playlist and you want to layer it and structure it all out, this is how I like to do it. I like to typically have an 8-bar loop, sometimes 16 bar, it just kind of depends. Then we're going to go into the hook immediately after that. And like I said earlier in the video, I like to play my 3 melodies typically as the bridge. Then when it goes into the hook itself, the 4th melody will kick in, as you can see. And then during that hook, the last and final melody kicks in, so that the hook doesn't sound as, the same and the redundant sound. Because if you notice, all my instruments, we're not going to play the instruments yet. All the instruments could play for the continuation of the 16 bars. So all of these are going to play all 16 bars, all the sounds when everything drops, and to give it a little bit of variation so it doesn't sound the same. Because if I just had these notes here playing, it's all going to sound the same for 16 bars. This one, adding that in there, gives it a little bit of a variation. Then we immediately go into the verse. So again, I do 16 bar verses. Here's my verse. So as you notice, my background and my melody noise are all playing throughout the duration of the beat. And there's no right or wrong way to layer beat, structure it out, or anything like that. So you can do it differently. So you got your first 8 bars in the melody. Then you've got your 16 bar hook, right? Your 16 bar hook. Then you got your 16 bar verse. And as you can see, this gives it a little bit of variation by not having just these playing the whole entire time. This gives it a little bit of variation while the artist is rapping. And then I've got my 8-bar bridge to bring me back to the hook. And you don't have to add bridges. You can just do a 16-bar verse and then have the hooks just drop straight again. A lot of songs are like that, right? So once it drops from once the bridge is done playing, then we're back into the hook, right? For 16 bars. Then we're back into the verse for another 16 bars. And if you notice, lots of times what I like to do is make my hooks a little bit different, or my verses a little bit different. So these are the verses. Sometimes I'll do something like this instead to give it a little bit of variation. So it'll be that these are the verses, but if you notice, I have this sound playing rather than this sound playing. That way it just sounds a little bit different. And again, you don't have to do that. That's just something I like to do. And then we're back into our bridge right after the verse. And then we have an 8-bar outro, right? And then usually my outro is very similar to what the hook sounds like, but I may just take out some of the instruments. I'll have all the melodies playing. I usually take out my hi-hat and like my snare or something like that typically. And that's literally it. So for the whole entire beat, this is what the whole loop will come out to being. So 8-bar intro, 16-bar hook, 16-bar verse, 8-bar bridge, and then back into the hook. We copied and pasted it basically, right? So let's hear this whole entire thing from start to finish as far as the melodies go. And that's basically it. guys, and that's really it. So basically all we do is once we have this first part of the beat made up, which is your 8 bars for the intro, 16 for the hook, 16 for the verse, and 8 bars for the bridge again, you just copy it over, and then you can go ahead and add your instruments. I like to do the instruments and the melodies at the same time when I'm doing this, so I just copy everything over at once. Totally up to you how you do it. But that's basically it, guys. Start off with one nice, really good, well thought out melody. You use this melody to build the next melody. Then you use this melody to build these 2 melodies to build your 3rd melody. Then you use these 3 melodies to build your 4th melody. Then you use these 4 melodies to build your 5th melody. So hopefully that's a pretty clear cut, clean cut understanding of how I go through these melodies and how you can piggyback off of just one melody and start from there, utilizing your ghost notes, and just having a little bit of understanding of music theory does help. If you know music theory actually for real, that's really going to help you out. And you just kind of go from there, and then understanding how to lay out and structure a beat properly as far as your intro, your hooks, and all that other stuff. As long as you know how to do all that, you're not going to mess up making a beat. What's going to make you improve over time is just getting better and better, consistently making beats and going from there. So if you haven't already, like, comment, share, subscribe on this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. What more you guys want to see? I think next week's video, or soon after, we're going to be doing a drum breakdown, and I'll show you guys kind of how I do my instruments, my 808s, and we'll go over all of this stuff here. Might use this beat, might use a different beat, but if you guys got any more comments, questions, or anything like that, drop it in the comment section. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. Either which way, just interact with the video so the algorithm works in my favor and I can keep making these beats and these tutorials for you guys. And we'll be back next week. Peace.